Hello, my name is Bonnie Burke and I work for Workforce Resource. Thank you for attending this webinar titled Following Directions. Every time I go through this material, I think, Bonnie, you are really bad at following directions. So together, I'm hoping that I can help you improve your skills, and some of this will rub off on me eventually. One of the good things about attending this webinar is that it is a part of a series that I want to share with you. If you complete these critical employment skill webinars, you will be able to earn a certificate. So there's 4 webinars total. One will be called Team Building. There will be another webinar on problem solving. The third one is on how to succeed in your next job. And then, of course, this one, Following Directions. So once again, if you are able to attend all of those webinars, you will earn a certificate titled Critical Core Employment Skills, and it will be from Workforce Resource. What do I hope that you are going to be able to take away from this webinar? 2 main things. I hope that you will be able to understand and describe the importance of following directions. We all know it's important, but I'm going to give you some examples of why it's really important, especially as it relates to our jobs. And the second piece I hope that you will learn from this webinar is I'm going to help you demonstrate, and I'm hoping in your jobs you're going to be able to demonstrate following directions using some tips and tools that you have learned from this webinar. I always like to throw a little bit of humor in there, and I hope that you appreciate it as much as I enjoy it. So look at this guy. How many times have you bought something and it had this whole list of directions, and you throw the directions away because you're like, I can figure it out, I can do this. Well, this is the adventure of the man who was terrible at following directions. I'm going to build a DIY table, a do-it-yourself. Later, look what happened. He said it looks like a piece of artwork. Well, it did, and he made a little money. I'm sure this only happens in the cartoon world, but those directions, especially as it relates to our jobs, are really important. First activity that I would like you to do is a quiz. You're probably thinking, what? I didn't know I was going to have to take a quiz. Well, I hope you enjoy it, okay? And there's just a very few questions on this quiz, and I'm going to give you 1 minute, and I know the slide says 2 minutes, but I think you're going to be able to get this done in 1 minute. So follow the directions, take the quiz, and I'm going to check with you to see how you did. Did you read the directions? If you did, I want you to look at your answers, and the only question that you should have answered was number 5. Did you try to answer the television show, The Apprentice? Donald Trump made this phrase famous, "You're fired." Did you answer that one? Did you answer the scarecrow on The Wizard of Oz was searching for this? Brains. if you answered those, you did not follow the directions. So I'm sure some of you did, and I bet some of you just jumped right in and started taking the quiz, right? She said she was only going to give me a minute. That's not very long. Why would I read all those first? If you jumped all in and if you answered all 8 of those questions, this is really, really common. Why is it common? Well, number one, once again, I only gave you a minute, gave you a short period of time. As adults, we want things done yesterday. Quizzes are usually pretty painful, so I just want to get it done. If she says I have to do it, I'm just going to get it done. And if it's something that you're familiar with, the answers on that quiz, well, everyone's heard of Donald Trump lately, right? Most of us have watched The Wizard of Oz, so you may know those answers, so you're just going to jump right in. But after today's class, I hope that you will stop, take a step back, and be able to not only read, but understand and ask questions when you read directions. So, my background, as you may or may not know, is occupational safety. I'm an OSHA authorized trainer. Yep, that's right, I do training for OSHA. I was the safety manager for numbers of years. I'm not going to tell you how many. But the one piece that was on all of our equipment were warning and danger signs. Read and understand the operating manual before using this machine. Failure to follow operating instructions could result in death or serious injury. Well, the problem with that was, where's the operator's manual? I don't know. HR must have it. I don't know. Maintenance must have it. Well, really, it should have been on the machine. Did anyone read it? Chances are no. So warning labels and signs oftentimes become, I like to call them wallpaper, okay? If I had to sit and read an entire operator's manual before I operated a machine, chances are I would fall asleep in the meantime. I would hope that someone would verbally give me directions, would demonstrate and show me how to safely operate that machine, and then watch me while I'm operating the machine. Then maybe I could read the manual if I was suffering from insomnia. Mistakes happen, however, if we do not follow directions. I'm going to tell you about a mistake that I made because I didn't follow directions, but I want to ask you, can you think of a situation, either at work or at home, where you made a mistake because you, or you can think, did this happen to anyone else? They didn't first take the time to fully read nor fully understand the directions. Well, I did. A couple of years ago, I was at work, and all of a sudden, I got short of breath. And my heart was racing like crazy. I thought I was having a heart attack. I'm like, oh my goodness, what's happening with me? I had to sit down. Sweat was pouring off of me. And I was by myself. So I called my husband and I said, you know what, I'm not feeling so good. But after about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, resting, some water, I said, it's okay, I'm gonna drive home, I'll be fine. The next day, however, I went to the doctor. I ended up in the hospital because I was severely anemic. Do you know what caused it? Ibuprofen. Did you know if you read the directions on that bottle, you are not supposed to take that long term? It can cause stomach bleeds. That's what happened to me. Look at the back of all of your medicine. The warning labels are about in 2-point font. Since that happened, I bought this beautiful magnifying lens. I keep it on my kitchen counter. I read and follow the directions of all the labels on medicine. Can you relate this to work? Oh, absolutely. In manufacturing, there are so many times that you will be working with paints, chemicals, cleaners, solvents. Make sure that not only do they train you on how to safely follow the directions, how to mix it, how to store it, how to handle it, but that they also give you a copy of the safety data sheet. Moving along. Enough about me. You have been given a set of directions. Now, how do you remember them? So you've just been trained on how to do a job. It's a little complex. You've never done it before. How do you remember it the next day? I'm going to give you a little clue on how most adults learn. And you're probably going to fall someplace among this pyramid, and I'm hoping by covering the information on this slide, it might help you remember those directions. So if you just stand and listen to someone tell you the directions, chances are you might remember about 5%. It's kind of like if you just sit and listen to me talk during this webinar, you might only remember 5%. So that's why I give you some handouts and copy of the slides if you want, and hopefully you'll follow up with someone when the webinar is over. So if you are told to how to do something, or told directions, and then if they give you work instructions or an owner's manual, if you read it, you may remember about 10% of the information within the next 24 to 48 hours. However, if you get to watch someone demonstrate it, if you get to listen, read, and then you get to practice it after it's been demonstrated, chances are the average adult will remember 75% of the instructions. In your next job, if someone says, hey, I want you to operate this machine, all you do is you push this button, you put this part in, you got it good, and they walk away, I want you to say, stop. Please come back, because you may remember nothing what they said. As a new employee, most of the time we're nervous. Most of the time we really want to do a good job and not even quite sure what questions to ask. So make sure that they have given you great verbal directions, that they've demonstrated how to do it, that they've given you time to practice it. If you see it says 75%, you're going to remember about 75% if you practice it. Well, if you want to remember 90% of it, take a few minutes and teach that skill to someone else. If you have to teach a skill, studies show that you are going to remember about 90% of the skills and the directions. So hopefully that little learning pyramid will help you and also empower you when you're being trained or when you are doing the training yourself. I'm going to give you 4 important points I feel that will help you when following directions, especially thinking of your job. Get the big picture first before you begin. So what's the purpose of this? What's the end results? What are you going to be doing? So get the big picture first and ask questions. Most of the time, as a new employee, when we are asked, so do you understand? Do you get it? We say, yeah, I do. And in your heart, in your mind, you're thinking, I don't get a word that they just said. Why do we do that? Well, we do that because we want to impress them. We want to make sure that we get to keep this job, right? So ask them questions. Do not hesitate to say, can you please explain that to me again? Can you please show me how to do that again? Can you watch me while I do it? For a period of time in my career in manufacturing, I was a supervisor. So anytime I trained a new employee and I gave them a set of directions, I gave them a notepad. It was a small one that they could keep in their back pocket, and I also gave them a pen. And I told them, I want you to write down the directions as I'm giving them to you. I also had them written out. However, if they wrote it down, put that notepad in their pocket, and then later on took it out, read it, and then asked questions about information that they had questions about. So that notepad in the back of your pocket can be so helpful. In today's world with technology, hey, if your employer says you can have a smartphone, you might be able to take notes right on that smartphone, but ask permission first. The 4th point I want you to remember when reading directions is to be attentive to the numbers that are in that directions, be attentive to pictures and symbols. When an employer writes a set of directions, oftentimes they will add pictures, oftentimes they will add numbers to it. So take the time, read it through, pay attention to those symbols. On this slide, I want to show you some pretty universal symbols, right? So we all know what this sign means with the red and white. Fire extinguisher, right? It doesn't have to say fire extinguisher. Well, look at the dog with the big line going through his body or her body. What does that symbol say? Probably no pets in this area. The cigarette with the line through it, we all know what that symbol means. You don't need to read or write anything else. No smoking. How about the two stick figures on the bottom? Usually that means universal bathrooms. Now I want to show you some additional symbols, and I want to see, do you know what these symbols mean? What do you think? Do you know what that gold thing that looks like an L means? If you do, good for you. Do you know what this man with the starburst through his chest means? If you do, you've been paying attention or have recently received some hazardous communications training. How about this 6? Do you know that that means 6 sigma? How about this E? What the heck is that? It means estimate. And I'll go back to the L. That's the French symbol for a lire. I don't know what a lire is. I just know that's the symbol that means lire. So are they universal symbols? In your directions, are you reading directions that were made for us here in Wisconsin, in the United States? Or are you reading directions that were from a product that was made in a different country? The safety symbol that's on this screen actually just recently changed as of this year. OSHA decided to put new pictures, they called them pictograms, I call them symbols, on hazardous chemicals. If you don't know what a symbol means, make sure that you ask. When you're following directions, another important skill is listening. So you think, I know how to listen, Bonnie, what's up with this? It is, to me, it's an important skill. Most of the time in the environments that we're working in, listening becomes a challenge, especially if your work environment is loud, especially if there's a lot of things that are going around you. People are on the phone, the copy machine is running, somebody else is talking down the hallway. And so the stress of the noise, the environment, can make it really difficult to listen to directions. The other piece I want to point out to you is typically we are capable of listening at about 125 words a minute, but we think about 600 words per minute. What impact might this have to our listening? Chances are we are thinking, remember 600 words, way faster than what we're listening to the directions. We might be thinking about my husband, my dog ran away, I need to get oil changed after work, oh, I have to stop at the grocery store. We may not be listening at all, or we may be guessing what they're going to say next, or try to formulate questions that we want to ask. Because of that, it is really a challenge in a loud, stressful environment to listen effectively. For effective listening, to me, some of the things that I'm going to encourage you to do is, to the best of your ability, be in the moment. Try to tell that 600 words a minute in your brain to be quiet, please. It works, trust me. When you find your brain talking to you, try to turn it off. Be in the moment. Look at the person in the eye who's giving you directions. Repeat back the directions to the person who has given them to you. It's absolutely appropriate to say, do you mind if I repeat those back? I want to make sure that I understood what you said. And then also ask for clarification. Asking for clarification, asking to repeat back the directions. As a new employee, wow, that employer is going to be very impressed. They're not going to think, what's wrong with you? Didn't you just hear what I said? If they are, that's their problem, not yours. Another tip to improve listening. Listening is both verbal and also nonverbal. What do you think the lady with her arms crossed, what do you think she's saying? What do you think those 600 words a minute are saying in her brain? She's probably not hearing a word he's saying. I'm not even going to repeat what I think she's saying. And so our body language, or the body language for the person who is giving us directions, can either help or impede our ability to listen. When we are under stress especially, our brains go into a different mode. And typically, a new job is very stressful. And so our brains are not functioning at their optimum. And so hopefully that tip in itself will help you realize how important it is to ask questions, to write things down, to take a break. Say, hey, do you mind if I just go get a glass of water? Do you mind if I just go use the restroom for a minute? Do what you need to do to calm down so you can follow the directions and remember them. So I have a little activity that I want you to do, and I'm going to give you directions, and on a scrap piece of paper, I want you to draw, yes, draw the objects and draw them where I tell you to draw them. So I'm going to give you directions, verbal directions, and I want you to follow the directions. So you ready? Do you have a pen? Do you have a paper? Okay. So to start with, I want you to draw a triangle on the top left-hand part of your page. Below the triangle, I want you to draw a rectangle. I want the top left-hand corner of that rectangle to touch the bottom right-hand corner of the triangle. Below that rectangle, I want you to draw an oval. Below that oval, I want you to draw another rectangle. And this is your last shape. Below that rectangle, I want you to draw another triangle. I want the top of that triangle to touch the bottom right-hand corner of the rectangle. Does your page look like this? If you did, congratulations. You did a great job following my instructions. However, if it looks a little disheveled, not quite like that, what went wrong? Were my directions confusing? Was I being clear enough? Did I give you enough time to draw? Did you have questions and you couldn't ask them? And so when we're following directions, if your only sense is listening, it is so important to ask those clarifying questions. It's to ask, hey, do you mind if I have a little bit more time? And to really think and follow those directions as best as you can. I hope you enjoyed that activity, and feel free to do that at home tonight. See if your family can follow your directions. A little bit more on verbal directions. Is it the listener or is it the speaker who's responsible for ensuring directions are followed? It's both, isn't it? Absolutely. However, if you're the new employee and you're the listener, it's your job to ensure that you understand the directions and that you have the tools and the ability to follow them. And I give you a quick review, and I want to see what you remember from this webinar. What 3 things can you do to improve your ability to follow directions correctly. You can go through your notes. I'll give you a minute to jot things down. What 3 things? 1, get the big picture. Ensure you understand the why. There's a little child in all of us, and remember, children always ask why. So tell me about what's this for? What's the purpose? What's the goal? When is it due? Ask questions, take notes, and pay attention to symbols and pictures. So hopefully those tips are going to help you and improve your ability to follow directions. When giving directions, what can you do to ensure that the listener has heard you? So now you're giving directions. What can you do to ensure that listener has heard you? Ask open-ended questions. Try to stay away from asking, so did you understand? Because chances are, even if the person does not understand, they're going to say, yep. They're going to be the bobblehead doll in the back of your window seat. Have the listener repeat back. So I just want to make sure that you understood what I said. Can you please repeat it back to me? Okay. Ask open-ended questions. Have the listener repeat back. So why is following directions so important at work? So why did Bonnie make this a part of this series? Well, what do you think? What do you remember? Number 1, I really feel it is especially important for our own personal safety. My manufacturing hat comes back on, my safety hat comes back on, and so many times I feel that new employees, they listen and they follow the step-by-step directions on how to make something or do something, but the safety piece of it oftentimes gets overlooked. Yep, I remember that, but I just want to get it done. So following directions is so important at work for safety, productivity. We're all, no matter what our jobs are, we're hired to produce something. So we are far more productive when we know what are the directions and then have the ability to follow them. And then also for quality. Are you doing what the customer needs you to do? Is this meeting the customer's requirements? So safety, productivity, quality are all extremely important reasons why to follow directions. Why do most adults skim over written directions? What do you think? Do you do that? If I give you a set of directions, chances are you're going to read the top sentence. You might read the bottom sentence, but trust me, the stuff in the middle, most of us skim over it. Well, number 1, we just might be in a hurry. We are in a world that's so fast-paced. Multitasking is everyone thinks we have to be multitasking. And maybe we think, we already know how to do this, or we've done it before, or this is so simple, I don't need to read this stuff. If given a set of written instructions for your job, take the time to read over them. You can always ask, may I have a copy and take this home with me? You might not be able to, depending on the company's policy. Always ask. So we talked about why it is important to follow directions, and I gave you some examples. Hopefully you enjoyed that activity. And I'm going to try to end up this webinar with a little personal story that's maybe going to help you follow the directions. So this is Bonnie. I'm stopping at a gas station because I don't know how to get to someplace. I'm lost. So I go into the gas station and I give them the address and I say, can you please help me? I'm lost. Can you tell me how to get to, and I give them the address. And they say, sure. You turn here and then you go to this street and you go south and then you watch for this street and at this street you go north and do you have it? Oh yeah, I've got it. I get back to my car and I'm like, I have no idea what they just said. Has that ever happened to you? Maybe in today's world with Garmin's and technology, it doesn't happen to you anymore. Yet, think about what I talked about today. How could I have remembered those directions better when I got back to my car? I could have asked directions better. I could have asked questions, more open-ended questions. I could have written them down. I could have got back to my car and read them over. If I had additional questions, I could have went back in. So wanted to tie this into my funny personal stories. I got a Garmin for Christmas because I kept getting lost. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation on following directions. Thank you for attending, and I hope to see you soon.